Hey guys, welcome back to the Let's Talk Business podcast. Today we have a very interesting show. In today's show we will have a conversation and have a deeper understanding as to what challenges does HR faces when they are in unionized environment. Through different articles, facts, I'm providing some strategies for navigating these strategies effectively. For today's talk, we have a very special guest. Graduated from York University in Administrative Studies and a specialization in Human Resource plus an MBA. This strategic human resource leader with more than 8 years of experience and a proven track record of driving organizational success through people, known for data-driven approaches, constantly delivering impactful HR programs that result in increased employee engagement, retention, and productivity. We had all the privilege to be taught by this amazing professional in the past. Ladies and gentlemen, Habete.
Thank you. Oh, that's so kind.
Well, I'm used to calling you teacher, but for the sake of today's episode, we're just going to call you Aaron.
Yeah,
Aaron, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for taking your time.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Please introduce yourself to our lovely public, a little bit more what you do and what is your role in today's era.
Well, you gave me a great introduction there, great ego boost, so I don't know what more there is to say, but so like Mateo said, I've been working in HR. Actually, I'm coming up on my 10th year this year, which is amazing. So a lot of it as an HR manager, working for smaller organizations. I started working with family businesses, so working for a dealership in Toronto, a car dealership in Toronto. Just really got thrown into HR there, handed the keys to the department and said, "Here you go, it's yours." And I think it was 3 months out of school, something like that. It was pretty crazy, but it was really great experience. It really helped me learn how to manage a department, manage the operations day to day. Wasn't unionized there, but there were union drives. I actually remember there was one, I think it was a podcast too, that came out in our industry about about unionized drives and at dealerships, and my boss freaked out and I went, "Don't ask me what to do, I don't know." I've only taken a course in industrial relations, but anyway, it worked out, it was fine. And then I worked for a telecommunications company, which was really cool. It was like not a startup, but more like a tech scale up. Mm-hmm. So they were transitioning to like a cloud business, so that was really cool. No issues with no union there, but I got to that point. I was about 4 or 5 years into my career, and I was really starting to think about, what are the building blocks of skills that that I need to build. And one of them I wanted to try was labor relations. So I got an opportunity to work in hydro, which is heavily unionized. Quite a different work environment for sure. Not a bad one, I would say. It was just very, very different challenges, different ways of dealing with HR solutions and things like that, and learned pretty quickly, not to be kind of a bull in a china shop, if you know that terminology, right? Yeah. Where you've got to be much more patient, much more pragmatic, and work with stakeholders. So government and union was an interesting experience. And then I spent some short time at another government service for about a year. And now I'm actually working with a steel manufacturer, which is kind of cool. They have a small unionized shop as well, but they're predominantly non-union. And and in terms of HR experience, I've kind of touched on everything. Kind of done compensation, recruitment, what else? Talent management. Learning and development, performance management, health and safety, all of those things. So I've really enjoyed my career. It's been really different, and I've really strived for each opportunity to be really different, to kind of, build on those foundations that I've had. And yeah, it's a great career. So for any of your listeners that are, and you guys as well, I know are really considering careers in HR, it's a wonderful career. So it's been
I don't know about that.
I say that on camera.
Okay, so to start and touching bases with today's topic, Aaron, could you please explain to us and to the public what is a unionized environment and how is it different from a non-unionized workplace?
Yeah, sure. So a unionized environment is a work environment where the employees are represented by an organization, I guess you can call it, and they form a collective, which is what we refer to as a union. So, really quick history lesson. Like this is from I would say the scientific management days and like early on. This is kind of where unions come from, like hundreds of years, like 100 years ago. And it's just morphed into what it is now. But so in a unionized environment, the employees really see themselves as a collective. So if the four of you were in a unionized position, you're kind of seen as a union together. Of the Mateo union, right? As opposed to it's Mateo, Chio, Rajdeep, and yourself, right? So it's different in the sense of when you are. From the employee's perspective, when you're in a non-union environment, you're kind of really relying on yourself to understand the rules, the regulations, what your rights are, what's fair and whatnot. In a unionized environment, you have representation. So if there's an issue, if there's a discipline that comes, to you, if you lose your job, if there's a rule being violated or something like that, you can be represented by the union, and they would go and work out a resolution or for whatever the conflict is. Some real big changes between union and non-union. So it's good in the sense that unions are really big on job protection. They're really big on equity and fairness, which I think are critically important. Especially with kind of the turbulent economy we've got right now. They really value that, and a lot of the conflicts that I've dealt with in my career, the root causes are concerns about job protection and concerns about fairness in the workplace. The other point I would say too is, the union is your representation. You're kind of seen as a collective. If you want something specific from your company, you want a raise, or you want a promotion not so much, but a raise, or you want a bonus or something like that, the company's management or your manager is not going to be able to directly negotiate that with you. You have to go through the union, and that means everybody's going to have to get it. So that unfortunately, it's good and it's bad sometimes, right? If you're an outstanding employee and you're looking for more, I've seen it be a bit of a retention issue as well. But nevertheless, overall, I don't take that as unions are bad. It's I think there's just positive and negatives in both cases. I could go on about this forever. We can whole podcast about this, but I'll leave it there.
I remember doing one the first time you taught us, and you were like, we touched base on the unionized environment. You were like, have you guys ever experienced being in a unionized environment? HR professionals, that's a headache for us.
Yeah, it can be.
Very funny comment, but
it could be.
Yeah, so before we jump into the next question, there are a couple of additional questions that I had in mind. So you've mentioned they're Mateo, these 4 people right now, we can form a union, but what is the minimum number of people that can be can come together?
Great question.
Yeah.
I'd have to consult the act, but I think it's really it's based on votes. It's all based on votes. When we're talking about closed shop and open shop, I haven't heard of very many open shops in Canada. I don't want to say there are or there aren't. Maybe I should probably stay away from that. But the unions I've dealt with are closed shop, which basically means, the employees when you're going through a union drive have to vote on whether or not they want to be represented by the union, and it's for everybody, right? It's for everybody in that collective. So, and generally. Definitely in government, I can speak to that. It's everybody, kind of below kind of a certain level of experience or a certain level of pay or even supervisory skills. So if you don't have any supervisory responsibilities, you're likely to be part of a union in a government organization. It really just depends. So they really just try to get everyone. So in terms of a minimum amount of staff, it really is dependent on the organization, but they generally go after, a collective of employees within your company, whether it's 10 or 10,000.
Okay, that's good. It's good to know. And based on your experience, you've touched with different industries and different size of companies. You've been in like family owned or small ones, I guess, and they're like, you've mentioned like startups or maybe like companies at scale. What do you think like are prone to more of a unionized environment? Is it more of like a small entity to mid-size or enterprise kind of level?
Yeah, great question. So all three definitely.
Okay.
And all to varying degrees. I think it's more industry specific. If I could answer your question, Chio.
Yeah.
So in hydro, where we had power line technicians, right? There's not a lot of alternatives for a power line technician to find work outside of the hydro company. There are contractors and things like that. That I don't think they're unionized, but anyway, there isn't like, Mateo's not setting up a hydro shop, and you're not setting up a hydro shop, and there's competitors, and you've had enough of Mateo, you're going to go to Chio, right? And then when you're done with Chio, you go to Aaron. Like, it doesn't work like that, right? Because they're government organizations. It's their they've got a geographical kind of advantage there. So I see a lot of that, and I see a lot of industries where there's a lot of fluctuation in really how the economy's going, or something's really tied to the economy, or there's job security issues. Automotive, they are very heavily unionized. Manufacturing, not as much anymore, but that's definitely was a target before. Steel, we've got a lot of unionized workplaces as well. It's really where there's not a lot of alternative, or like we were talking about before, right? Yeah. Where there's perceived inequity, or those job security issues.
Okay.
Right?
Got it. Yeah, because that's what my next question was, like, what are the common issues? Was supposed to ask, but job. Job security, equity, and stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are usually the core issues.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. Now I think we're finally going to the next question, the role of unions. So unions play a central role in advocating for workers' rights. How would you describe the main responsibilities of a union in a modern workplace as of today, and how do unions impact management practices and workplace culture?
That's a great question in terms of modern workplaces. We've talked about this a lot. I've talked a lot about this with unions, especially with the emergence of AI and the emergence of new technology. Unions are very concerned about that, right? Like, they're very, very concerned about that. What does that mean for my job? What does that mean for our members, right? So it's a conversation, and we did this a lot at the last place I was at that was unionized, and we talked pretty much every month with them about it, right? It's kind of a standing issue in our meetings with them, right? Okay, well, how are we using AI? So we chose to be upfront about it and just say, like, here's how we're using AI. We're using it we're building this new technology. It's going to have AI in it. It's doing this work that some of your members are doing, but that's okay, because we can get you to do some other, we can just get you to do some other work that's, is kind of sitting on the back burner, but it's valuable, right?
So you do like a job rotation kind of?
Yeah, you could do that way too. Yeah, and that's actually a really good strategy as well, right? To keep your skills moving. Honestly, guys, we don't know, and I don't know, and we don't know at all like what's going to happen with AI and technology.
Fair,
so it's really, really hard to give the unions assurances. They know that, and most of them, just kind of want to be kept in the loop. I think you'll see. And you have been seeing a lot more union activity in the news and things like that, and a lot of this is centered
Canada
around
Post, the most
Canada
recent
Post.
one.
I'm thinking Amazon. I'm thinking organizations like that, where they're really trying to embrace automation and technology. There's definitely going to be a resistance, right? So, in terms of workplace culture and the responsibilities of a union, we haven't talked about the collective agreement much yet, but. I think they see themselves as kind of the stewards of the collective agreement, making sure that that's followed, making sure they keep us accountable and keep us honest to that agreement. They can have a really big impact on management practices. Anytime that you are coming out with a new practice or policy or program, you really need to, it's like chess almost, right? We were talking about, your son playing chess. That's a very good game to learn while playing...
strategy.
Well, exactly. While being in a unionized environment, because you really have to think about that next move, right? What is the union going to, how are they going to perceive this? Are there going to be issues with, are they going to take issues? Are they going to file grievances? Is this going to be something that's just dragged out all, through arbitration? All of these things. We're going through that with my current employer right now, where they introduced a program even with the union's help. It still caused so many issues and so many, like a huge uptick in grievances, and now we're just kind of working through to make sure that it makes sense. So a good union will have a good relationship with management, or enough of a relationship, to have collaborative discussions about this, and about new policies, bring up their concerns, not necessarily agree or kind of sign off on it, but meet in the middle, understand. I'm like, okay, fine, this is what you want to do, and we told you our piece, and but we're going to grieve if there's a problem, right? And that's usually kind of what they'll tell you, and that's totally fine. You just kind of want to understand their mindset and their perspective, and consider that when you're bringing up the programs.
Perfect. So we just touched collective agreement.
Yeah.
So continuing with that, what some of the challenging aspects that you see between the employers and the unions that they face during the collective bargaining?
Collective bargaining?
And how that can you suggest some ideas for the HR professionals when it comes to facing the unions, and how they can come in same page when it comes to the collective bargaining aspect?
Yeah, so I think for an HR professional, the your best strategy is to kind of act as I don't want to say the steward for the employer. It's not necessarily that. It's kind of more, that's what the union thinks we do. But I think it's more trying to maintain a level of consistency. Because if you don't have that, a level of consistency and really keeping track of workplace issues. Because the worst thing that you want to do is go into a negotiation and you have no strategy, no plans. Like you're just completely reacting to what the union is looking for. But there will be challenges. There will be things that your managers will tell you, and it's not all on you, right? You want to really be that business partner, right? And be that individual that has relationships, really deeply understand the business, wherever your business unit is. If you're in a smaller organization, and you want to, but if you are kind of responsible for everyone, you really want to understand the business. If you've got a business unit, really understand that particular unit, whether it's sales or marketing or whatever, provide that information in terms of, okay, these are the problems that we're seeing. These are things that we need to address at collective bargaining. Usually what the employer wants to deal with is kind of more non-monetary stuff. So process-driven, make things kind of a little bit more operationally efficient.
Yeah.
They might want some, it's really hard to get any kind of concessions out of the union if that's what you're looking for, but and the union's usually looking for things that will add, kind of your pocketbook, right? Whether it's an allowance, a clothing allowance, or whether it's, benefits, wages, overtime, all of these things, right? So, so I think I caught on everything there, but in terms of for what I would think for HR professionals, really understand kind of the issues that are going on, centralize them, help the business with that, and help formulate a strategy when you do go into collective bargaining. Doing that is a game changer for sure.
Okay, so as you already mentioned, we can meet in the middle for the things which we are doing.
Yeah.
So I have some questions regarding the best practices for employees and the unions. So effective communication, according to me, and cooperation are essential in preventing conflicts. Okay. What are some more best practices for both unions and employees to establish productivity, respectful relationships?
So employees and unions?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think for employees, I think it's being clear with your union in terms of what you're looking for. And I've talked about this at at the hydro company that I've worked at, and yes, the union is representing the employees, but the employees, they'll have representation that are part of the union, report back to the union, and all of that. Those individuals, I think, are really key and keeping them in the loop of what's going on in the workplace, and being rational and reasonable about kind of the issues that are coming up. The union, and I think people forget this sometimes, right? The union is a separate organization. They don't live in your organization unless you're really big or you got a lot of problems. They don't tend to do that. They tend to rely on stewards, right? So if you guys were part of a union, Mateo is a business representative for the union. He'd work with you three to say, okay, you're our employee stewards. You work for the company. You work for Aaron Co. or whatever. He's relying on you to tell him like what's going on. Aaron is being a jerk. He's not he's making us work 20 hours a day. Like Mateo will and that's Mateo's role, right? Really to help like facilitate the conversation. Like Aaron, like how about 10 hours instead of 20 hours, and kind of working through all that. So for employees and unions, I've heard from stewards that union stewards, that employees aren't always realistic in some of their demands. So the union stewards do a lot of filtering out of some of the ideas, but they hear everything, right? And I think it's a lot on them. So when they come to the table with us, sometimes they're very combative, or they're very upset about something. And to us, it just seems like such a small issue, but to them, it's huge. Maybe they're hearing it from a lot of different individuals. So I think being really realistic, kind of about your goals and objectives, union member and employee, and being firm and fair, right? I'm not advocating for the union or the employees to be reasonable based on the employer's perspective there. I'm not saying that'd be great, but it's not what I'm trying to say. It's more reasonableness in terms of what the actual issue is, and kind of working together to come to a solution. And I think most employers will understand that, and they work with the unions to figure that out.
Yeah, and that's totally valid, because some of the I guess bargaining, like some people take advantage of it, or some wants to take more of from the employer, and at least steward does the job of like kind of being the mediator of both, and just having that reasonable
and it's a game of strategy, especially when you're talking about collective bargaining, like when you're renewing your agreement or creating a new one. It's some gamesmanship happens, right? Games happen. The management plays games, the union plays games. Eventually at some point there'll be a cut the BS kind of conversation with whoever's in the negotiated leads at the table, and they'll kind of hash out the real core issues, and then everything else will kind of fall by the wayside. And
I also think, and we have like what we have seen throughout the years, every relationship with the employee and like every part of the company, it's like in a constant evolution, and the problems or the bargaining that it was being done back in the day is not the same concern as nowadays. Like it all shifted, and I think it's a constant understanding of what is going on with the people, with the employee, how they react to certain situation, because I think in the past there were some concerns that nowadays is like, okay, that's not even in the question anymore, with all like EDI coming into playing a big game here. Of course, it has always been a thing, but I think nowadays is more impactful, and I think employees or sometimes those kind of situation are really attached to sometimes even a personal matter, and it's a role of the HR to be like, okay, so even if it's
hash it out.
Early on I learned two things. I learned that you have to maintain composure, and you have to maintain kind of that that those personal personality issues or whatever, those conflicts, just remove them from when you're dealing with I think I interpret what you're saying as kind of more around there's an issue, or even there's something being fought through the grievance procedure, right, in the collective agreement. So for your audience, a grievance is when a union employee has alleged the company has violated the collective agreement, and they're fighting it, and they want some sort of restitution for it. Money, back pay, promotion. I can go on. That's a whole podcast on its own. But that's generally what happens. And I learned a couple things. So the first thing is grievances are healthy, right? With the union, you really have to see it as a relationship. They're a stakeholder. They're a partner, not necessarily a partner, but they're actually no, a partner. I think is probably fair. They're a partner in kind of the success of your business, especially when you're dealing with these especially right now, like automotive companies, like they've got to see their union as a leader, right? With the threat of tariffs and whatnot going on, there is a healthy amount of disagreement that you have, right? And for those of you that have partners or married or whatnot, what's really important, I guess, is how you deal with those conflicts. Are you yelling at each other? Are you throwing things at each other? Are you cussing at each other?
Yeah.
Right? That happens in unionized environments too, and it's not healthy, right? I've heard a lot of stuff in my career. Well, no, we don't really have that many. And even when I've interviewed with companies, no, we don't really have that many grievances. I'm like, is that a good thing?
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. There's a healthy balance, but anyway. So when you're dealing with that and you're HR, you have to learn to detach for a couple reasons. You need to be kind of the voice of reason, and I think as HR professionals, I've seen some really get bullheaded about an issue and look, it has to be like this. No, absolutely. And it's best not to get yourself too attached to like a resolution, I guess, or like a certain perspective. It could change, right? You could be right, you could be wrong. It could be somewhere in the middle, right? And the other thing I learned too is, okay, so fine, grievances are healthy, you detach yourself, but grievances are really personal for employees. Like they're really upset about something, right? So much so they've gone to the union and said, my company is screwing me. I want, restitution. I want some sort of payback, right? I didn't get the promotion I should have gotten because I've got more seniority, or I didn't get overtime on the weekend. That cost me money, right? Like you didn't ask me if I wanted to do overtime and a double time or a time and a half or whatever. That's real dollar value to somebody, right? So I think empathetic is usually the way to go. Asking a lot of questions, trying to find a resolution that works, and not being afraid to say like, okay, look, if we can't resolve this, let's maybe work through mediation, right? And I've also heard arbitration. If so, for your listeners, arbitration is similar to court, where you would talk to an arbitrator, not necessarily a judge, but they're an arbitrator. They would hear your case and they make a ruling and it's final, it's firm. That's what you do, right? I've heard some organizations have a conversation with the union and say, look, we have no idea. There's an interpretation issue. I'm so tired of fighting about this. Let's just go to an arbitrator, get a ruling, third party, and be done with it, right? And some of them use that as a strategy, and that's kind of the stuff in a good relationship with a union that you want to work with, right? Sometimes things go to arbitration, sometimes they don't. You can settle them, through kind of that process. But anyway, coming back to that whole long-winded answer, HR I think is really best positioned to really manage that relationship with the union, and kind of manage expectations, of kind of everyone involved.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of hear you when you say like it's also kind of healthy to have grievances, just because you know that there's something wrong with the system and it's something you can continue to optimize or streamline or to refine, which the companies are unaware about, especially like how they're so focused with the work, and there's a lot of like new trends coming into the HR world nowadays, and it's always nice to pinpoint those kinds of nitty gritty and that needs to be resolved. And I don't know about going to arbitration though, just because like I feel like HR is like, okay, we're done doing this in a loop, let's just push it to arbitration.
Exactly. But it's expensive and it's time consuming, so we HR professionals don't like to do that. But honestly, sometimes it might be the best path forward. I know lots of organizations are kind of purposely doing that with their COVID-19 vaccination policies, as an example, right? Because it's new ground. I don't know, like we've it's been 100 years since we had a pandemic like that,
Yes.
something like that.
Yes.
There were no unions then, right?
Yeah.
Or they were just starting to form. Actually, I think.
Good example. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I think that's when they started to form. It was after that in World War One. I think is when it was. But anyway, so there's not really anything in the collective agreement. Are we infringing on your rights? Yeah, there's no pandemic, kind of thing. So, and the way our law works in Canada is you want to see what happens with past rulings, right? So, if I'm in a situation where, I'm trying to mandate a COVID-19 vaccination policy, and if I want to know if it's going to be upheld in arbitration, I have to see what other organizations have done. Not organizations, what other arbitrators have ruled for companies and unions when they've gone to fight for arbitration. And understanding that too, and not that you have to become a lawyer, but understanding that is a good thing to have in your back pocket. If I could tell a quick story, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
So when I was working at the hydro company, the union that we deal with, I can name them. I mean, there's not really that many power workers union.
We can just cut it.
No, it's okay. Power workers union. You can name them.
Did you sign an NDA? No.
So with them, they actually were challenging a lot of COVID-19 vaccination policies. So with some success, with some not. And I remember there was a case that came out, or an arbitrated case that came out, where they challenged this one organization. Actually, I can give you the case: PWU versus Electric Safety Authority. And the Electric Safety Authority wanted a strong COVID-19 vaccination policy. They've got people going to people's homes and doing all this kind of work, or kind of around the province. And Power Workers Union said, well, hang on a second. You're infringing on my rights here because I understand I'm not vaccinated, but I'm not going to the office. I'm not seeing anybody. I'm working remotely. You've shut down the office. Like, why am I getting vaccinated? And when the arbitrator said, you've got a point there. Like, yeah, let's, in a remote environment, testing is enough. All the HR people went nuts. Like, what do you mean? Like, we're trying to protect, we're trying to protect our work environment. So when you do have to come back, we don't know when our management is going to, bring staff back, or, when this is going to be over. Like, we don't know how it's going to evolve, right? So we all went nuts. We all went crazy. And but knowing that this union has had that success, and I think there's been some other decisions that have kind of gone back the other way, where like, no, this makes sense. But knowing that at the time when we were writing our COVID-19 vaccine, or I was writing the COVID-19 vaccination policy, it gave me some ammo to say, okay, look, when I was talking to the business, talking to the union, like, we're trying to be safe for everybody. We're trying to respect everybody's, kind of opinion, whether you agree with it or not. I don't care. It's, this is, we've got to do what's best for our organization, because the unions can sometimes get tunnel vision as well. And they're kind of really, this particular union was focused on this, but we have to also do the right thing for all of our staff, right? And protect them, and make sure that we are taking all precautions. We're doing our due diligence. If you guys have taken health and safety, we have to make sure that we've done our due diligence, and at a minimum, kind of explain ourselves to the Ministry of Labor and say, like, hey, we did everything we could to prevent an outbreak of COVID-19 in our workplace. Here's our policies, here's our programs, and here we go. So it's really just kind of working through all of that. And that's just an example of kind of the struggles you'll have with the union, but
it's not as easy as it sounds. I bet, like, there's a lot of pushback.
It's a lot of back and forth. It's a lot of working with them. It's a lot of exactly. So we took the approach of actually drafting the policy with them, and they really wanted to try and minimize the amount of discretion we had as the employer. But ultimately, we said to them, things will change, like as things kind of improve, or hopefully not, kind of go back to where it was. But, we've got to do what's right for all employees. And this is not whether you think I'm right or wrong, we're just trying to keep people safe.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Perfect. So, like we've talked a little bit about the workers' rights, so they demand anything during the negotiation and when it comes to collective agreement.
Yeah.
But can you share some key worker rights and like the regulations that are very important during the collective agreement that the union should focus on, the main key worker rights that you should think like
that I think they should focus on. I think they've got the right sense, right? Like they really focus on equity in the workplace. They really focus on health and safety, which I think is it makes our life harder, but it definitely that's definitely what I would do if I was in their shoes. Pay, of course, benefits. Although if I could be a little bit critical of our union friends, I do think that there is a bit too much of a emphasis on that. I get why, right? I get why that they focus on that in terms of, hey, I want the most amount of pay for our members. But, wages, in a unionized environment, they don't go up as high as you think, right? And even with, inflationary times, they were going up 3% a year in 2022, 2023, when inflation's 7 or 8%. I guess nobody was really getting that. But the increases there, aren't really going to keep up with the, expenses and things like that. So in a non-unionized environment, employers will look to other incentives, bonuses and things like that. They're more discretionary, but bonuses, retention bonuses, that kind of stuff, recognition, that kind of stuff. It's really, really hard to do that in a union because you can't think about the mentality of the union, right? Going back to Mateo, coming from the Mateo union, right? Mateo doesn't look at the three of you individually. He looks at you as a group. Yeah. So even if I want to give you a bonus to keep you, you're doing a great job.
You have to give everyone.
Everyone's got to get it. And the company's not going to do that, right?
Yeah.
Unless it makes sense. Right, so it kind of cuts you off at the knees sometimes. I know some privately some knowledge workers, right, that are unionized, in IT and finance and sales even. I don't know how that works, but sales, yeah. They find themselves not happy with the compensation package because they can go to another employer that does have bonuses and does give them 3-4 weeks vacation and recognition and all of that, and they're not part of a union, right? So it's good and bad. Like I don't take that to mean that unions are bad. They weren't around, life would be easier, but they are here for a reason, right? And they do serve I personally do think they do serve a purpose in our workforce for sure.
One question. If you were on the other side of the table, would you also kind of request those things from the company itself? Because right now you're on the other side of the table, which represents the employers and stuff like that. But if you were on the other side, would you also do that, what do you think?
Yeah, so I did a labor relations certificate with the HRPA. So you see that on LinkedIn.
Let's hope your company don't hear.
What's that?
Their company don't hear. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that you get to do in that program was you get to negotiate an agreement. So you get kind of like you negotiate a collective agreement. So I was on the union side, and I have to be honest, it was a bit of a shit disturber. So we started. The result, if you could believe this, the result was we went on strike because we couldn't agree on bereavement days. That'll never happen, but that's what ended up happening. I remember we were doing the training online. We started getting firm with the other side. It actually got a little contentious. I'm like, this is training. What are we doing? But it got contentious, and we made our demands for bereavement leave. They said no. We all turned our cameras off. And
oh wow!
Yeah, it got crazy. So if I was on the other side, I understand the tactics that they use. They're using strength tactics to show like, hey, we're one. We're a collective. We're one, right? Let's get
power of numbers.
Power of numbers. That's exactly why you unionize. That's exactly why you unionize. And I understand some of the tactics that they take, especially if they don't feel like they have a good enough relationship with the employer. There's theatrics, right? You've got to stand firm. You've got to, show that you're fighting for the employer, right? Or sorry, for the employee. You don't want to be seen. You do not want to be seen fighting for the employer, or being cozy with them. So a lot of unions really will hammer the employer. And I think if you understand the theatrics of it, and you get down to the brass tacks, as what my boss used to call it, you see that you kind of really understand what they're after. And hey, look, unions have their own agenda too, right? They want to, make inroads in collective agreements across the province. It's not just you, right? They're looking at. Just really try to stay in control, even though you're going to hear. I've heard this nonsense my whole career. Oh, HR's there for the company. Well, yeah, we all are here for the company, man. But they pay me. They pay you too. You just got to stay level-headed and actually try to think through what the actual problem is and try to resolve it. And I think that's really the key of a good labor relations professional. I'm still learning that. The union still pisses me off, but I give them a hard time. But at the end of the day, you really try to get to the resolution of the issue and try to maintain that good workplace culture. So they can be great for it, they can be terrible for it. It really just depends on what's everybody's kind of perspective.
Yeah.
So moving further, we're going to talk about future of labor relations now. As we know, workplaces are evolving a lot with the help of new technologies and AIs. They're stepping into the HR world. So my question is, what do you see as the future of labor relations in unionized environment? And are unionized environments adapting to these changes right now?
Oh, great question. I think some of them are, right? Technology has definitely been able to, kind of be implemented with resistance. And really, I think it really comes down to simple as, okay, you can implement whatever technology you want. How many jobs are we going to lose? Are we going to lose?
Yeah.
Right? How many people are going to lose their jobs, right? So I think if you can, again, keep that honesty with them, that goes a long way. In terms of the future, that's a really great question. I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes I think that unions are going to make a comeback, especially with the way the economies are right now. And a comeback meaning they're really going to strengthen in numbers and really make strong union drives. Because of all the stuff that's going on in the world right now. People want job security. But I think younger workers too, you guys, I think you really, if I could paint you with a brush with one thing, I think you do value flexibility a lot more than, even my generation did. I consider myself a millennial, and it was baby boomers after me, Gen X and baby boomers after me. I think you guys really, you guys tell me if I'm wrong, but I think you guys really value flexibility in your career, right?
Definitely, especially like us being parents, I guess. We want that kind of flexibility when it comes to time, just because we need we have some responsibilities with our child. I think it applies to everyone, it just depends on how they want to use flexibility per se. Younger workers, there's a lot of notion of younger workers nowadays, we're not as young as I guess what are they called, Gen Zs?
Gen Z, yeah.
Gen Zs work different, compared to
very much so.
So millennials such as ourselves have kind of a relation to how baby boomers used to work, just because we're also brought up in that kind of environment. We have to work hard, and no complaints at all. Sometimes we can, but we just have to work through the complaints and just do the job at the end of the day. I would also like to compliment the question that Labib was making, and we're reaching the end of our podcast today, and I want to throw you under the bus a little bit, just a quick curveball. We have touched bases in future of unionized environment. We have touched bases on many changes that have taken place, such as remote work, AI,
these all futuristic tools that are coming into place. I just want to ask you, like, from your point of view, and like without saying anything out of place, do you think the unionized environment or the unionization is growing or declining in Canada? And what do you think that are the factors that are influencing that trend in Canada specifically?
So unionization is declining in Canada. I don't recall the amounts, but I was at a training last year, and the instructor there said, because we were talking about this, right? Like, wow, the unions are really coming back. Like, they're really being strong. Like, Lana Payne's out there. Lana Payne's the head of Unifor, which is a really strong union. Like, wow, like this is really gonna, our inflation is really high. Like, this is really gonna start a union drive, right? And when we looked at the stats, it's like, no, not really, right? It's actually going the other way.
Yeah.
Strikes are down and unionization's kind of down. Unions are definitely trying to make inroads, right? Starbucks is one that we've heard about in the news. Was it here where I think they were trying to make inroads with Uber drivers as well? Like, they're definitely trying. But I do think that I don't think it will decline forever. I think it's going to be kind of an ebb and flow. And I think it's really going to be based on I think it's going to be really based on what people value as we kind of go through. This is a really turbulent time, right?
Yeah.
In terms
a lot
of
changes.
like a lot of changes, right? Like, kind of the we're seeing it in real time right now. Not to get political, but we're seeing it in real time with kind of the position the United States is taking, right? Like, they're really changing kind of the narrative of what's going on in the world, right? In terms of kind of the power dynamic.
Yeah.
So that's kind of making as we know here, right? Very people uneasy here. What does that mean? Are people gonna value security over that flexibility? I don't know, to be honest with you, but I think it will ebb and flow. And I think unions will be here for forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Well,
and I guess the one last thing about unions I will say is, again, if I could tell one more story. So when I took the same class you were taking in undergrad, my professor brought in like a high-ranking, I think he was the head of labor relations for Air Canada at the time, and he explained how his their collective agreements, they've got tons, but their collective agreements would go in like 3-year cycles. And as soon as he's done negotiating the one agreement, he's already working towards the next one. And I always thought that was very interesting. So I thought, what do you mean, right? And he's keeping regular contact with the union. He's got regular meetings with the union, to address issues outside the collective agreement. So by the time he gets, and they've got a strategy, they've kind of prepared. So by the time they get to collective bargaining, there's almost no surprises in terms of what the union's looking for. And that really resonated with me a lot, right? Because he really talked about building and forming a relationship with the union over a long period of time, as opposed to like a transactional deal, that you're doing in bargaining. While I kind of had the thought, kind of going into HR, that HR is usually kind of more administrative focused in unionized environments, I would say it's way more strategic than anything I've seen in non-union environments, because you really have to think 1, 2, 3 steps ahead in every decision that you make. It's exhausting, but it's also exhilarating.
Yeah, definitely.
And it just if you like strategy and you like thinking big picture, like I think that labor relations is a great career for sure.
I think I kind of resonate on like your last statement there, just because like HR, like being into an HR field, it's very important to kind of touch base and getting to know people, not just on a transactional basis. And that also correlates with AI and how technology comes in, whereas I don't think AI would kind of be the best mediator for conflicts or even for unionized environments, just because we think differently than technology is. And I don't think, like, nowadays, like, I've even met this person who already like kind of automates the recruitment process, aside from the usual HRIS, which screens our resumes nowadays. If you didn't know that. So if you get rejected, that's not usually the people. Don't go after the recruiter. But anyway, but I think that just resonates a lot, just because, like, you need to build a kind of relationship that makes us human. That's a component that not any technology can ever replace. And that strategy that one of the person that you've shared to us, like, kind of that strategy works a lot, because knowing people and how they think and how they want to kind of like effective communication and most negotiations is like knowing how they want to be communicated to, and that's how like how effective communication goes both ways, and that you can pull in strategy to the table and kind of like do that.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So I kind of resonate just because like I can see the step by step and like the main pillars of how you could talk to people, and like that is both exciting. I hear you, and that is also kind of frustrating at the same time. Yeah. But that's just life in general. Like,
and that's just life. And, and you know, with the union can do some of your bidding too as an HR professional, right? Which is, that's a strategy you can use as well, right? In terms of, we need more equity in performance management. Oh yeah, perfect. Thank you. I've been saying that for a year. Here's what we're gonna do, right? We're gonna have it based on career development and you can do stuff like that and not necessarily partner with them, because they're gonna say to you, well, you run the business. We don't want to get involved in running the business, but we'll share our thoughts and we'll share our concerns. I've always thought that the union would be an excellent partner for equity, diversity, and inclusion. Excuse me. Because they already understand equity, right? They already understand inclusion, right? And they can help us with diversity, especially with skilled trades. Skilled trades, it's hard to get candidates that are diverse, right? They just aren't going through the program. So rather than us, trying to mine through our applications, right, and trying to find those, diverse candidates that we're looking for, you can use other programs. You can get the union to yell at schools, right, to get more higher, more diverse candidates, right? Those kind of things. So you can kind of figure out how to use each other to work together and try to make some kind of harmony in the workplace.
Yeah.
Which is what we all want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, thank you so much, Aaron, for your time, your insights. It was such a nice conversation. I think it was really useful for our listeners and viewers that really enjoy business talks. And Unionized is a topic that not many people knows about or even touch bases on. So thank you so much, guys, for watching. Hope to see you next week in another podcast. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.